You know how when a relationship is fresh, you celebrate the little milestones like happy 1 month anniversary? Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. I've owned my Rebel 500 for exactly a month, so we're going to check in and see what it's been like so far.
Perfect.
Welcome back to Life of Birch. This is Birch, and that is right. Happy anniversary to us. It is exactly a month to the day since I purchased my Rebel 500, and exactly 4 weeks since I uploaded the first video with it to this channel. If this is your first time joining us on the channel, make sure to go ahead and check out all the other videos that I've posted so far. And as you're watching the video, if it seems like the kind of content you're into, make sure to smash the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on it. Now, let's talk about the first month with my bike. Let's start out by talking about what I've done to the bike so far. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that the bike looks nothing like it used to, and if you're new to the channel, well, here's what it used to look like. Roll the clip. So as you can see, the major thing that I did is that I did a color change on the bike. I swapped out the tank and the rear fender for new factory Honda pieces. The tank is painted orange, obviously, and the rear fender is now flat black instead of gloss black. I also removed the stickers that were on the rear fender and the little bit of rim tape that was left on the rims from the previous owner. Not that removing the stickers on the rear fender really matters since we replaced the whole thing anyway, but I did do that beforehand. And I also removed the fender rack that used to be on the fender to make room for a two-person seat, which I have not installed yet. And in the sound department, I have swapped out the exhaust already to the Shorty GP exhaust. That is all that I've had the chance to put on the bike so far, but I do have a lot more mods that I've already ordered, which is one of the things that I love about this bike is how easy they are to mod and how many mods are out there. I'll be installing the passenger peg kit, a new two-person seat like I just mentioned, and also installing frame sliders and an engine guard. All of those parts were ordered a while ago, but all the coronavirus madness has the deliveries delayed, so make sure to stay tuned for those install videos. And now let's talk about my general impressions of the bike 1 month in. For starters, although it's only a 500, I'm actually really impressed with the power of this bike. Now, keep in mind that I also used to own the Rebel 300, so I do have that to compare it to. And I gotta say that going from the 300 to the 500, the power is quite noticeable. I didn't think that it would be super noticeable. I thought that maybe it would just be, you know, more top end, but this bike is just so much more, I guess, capable than I thought it would be. You know, it's just as capable around town as the 300 was, but so much more capable on the highway, which actually surprised me. Now, while we're talking about the highway, I figured I should mention that one of the dislikes that I have about the bike is how much wind just hits you right in the chest. And I know that's unavoidable with a naked cruiser like this, and it could be because I'm also partially used to riding my fully fared VFR 750, but it did kind of catch me off guard, the fact that if I'm doing more than like 60 or 65 miles per hour cruising on the highway, it's almost like a strain on my neck and my arms because of how much air is hitting me in the face and the chest. So I may end up getting a little headlight fairing type thing in the future. Not sure how much that'll do, but honestly, anything that helps is great. And then getting back to the positives, this bike is just so much fun. The 500 weighs about 40 pounds more than the 300 does, so I was wondering how much the weight difference would be noticeable, but honestly, you cannot even tell. I've had the chance to do a decent amount of both around town riding as well as highway riding in the time that I've had the bike. I've put just over 550 miles on it so far, and surprisingly, in those 550 miles, I've had a lot less complaints about the seat than I thought I would. That's one of the biggest complaints with this bike that you'll hear if you're looking on the forums or on the Facebook groups, and honestly, one of the biggest complaints I had with my 300 when I owned it, how firm and uncomfortable the seat was, but I haven't had that issue with the 500. Now, so so far this bike only has about 1,500 miles on it, whereas my old 300 had about 6,000 miles on it. So I don't know if the foam in the seat just really breaks down that much between 1,500 and 6,000 miles, but I was pleasantly surprised with how comfortable this seat is. Not that it's super comfortable by any means, but a lot more comfortable than I was expecting. I will say though, while it is comfortable, it still is small. I almost feel like only like the back 3/4 of each of my cheeks is actually on the seat at any given time. And another thing that I remembered being really harsh from my 300 is the suspension. Oh, why did I do that? While the suspension is not the best and it is kind of bouncy and a little abrasive at times, it's really not as bad as I remember. And I think it all has to do with the preload adjustment on the rear springs. I think on my Rebel 300 I had it set to level 3 or 4, whereas right now I have it set to level 2, which is how it comes from the factory and is a little bit softer than I had it before, so it doesn't jar you quite as much. But with that said, it's still not the most comfortable suspension by any means, so I will be upgrading that sometime in the future. It's just not as immediate of a need as I thought it would be. So far, I have taken this bike on rides with a decent group of other bikes. I've ridden with anything from, 600cc sport bikes to big Harleys and everything like that, and I have not had any issues keeping up whatsoever. Some of the rides have just been normal, chill cruises. Others have been more spirited and fast-paced, and I haven't had an issue with any of it. It's so light and the wheelbase is so short that I really just feel like I can throw it around like a BMX bicycle. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts about this bike for sure. And another thing that I feel like is worth mentioning, not that it's necessarily about the bike, but I feel like the community around these bikes is just great. Sometimes in the biker world, I feel like people can get a little bit pretentious almost, but I feel like the Rebel community is just really supportive, and all of the forums and Facebook groups have been so helpful, and it's extremely rare that you see anybody with anything negative to say to somebody else. So I just think it's really cool that that the community around these bikes has been so supportive from what I've seen so far. Plus, they just sound so badass for only being 500 cc's. Let's see, what else? I guess it's worth mentioning that I am about 5'10", 5'11", and pretty lanky, and I don't find any issue with the seating position or size of the bike. Not that I'm extremely tall by any means, but I know that that's one of the big talking points of the Rebel is how they're a smaller bike in comparison to some of their competition, so you might feel a little bit cramped. But honestly, I haven't had any issues with that. The only thing that's ever felt cramped, like I said, is just my butt cheeks looking for more room on the seat. I guess I could also point out that the brakes leave a little bit to be desired. I understand that this bike's just built to be a decently priced entry-level cruiser, but the brakes are definitely a little bit softer and less responsive than I would personally like. But again, as with any of my other complaints, that's an easy enough fix. I'll probably just get some steel-braided brake lines and throw those on and see how much that helps. I mean, on the bright side, it's not like this bike is doing 150 miles per hour to where you really need that stopping power, but it's worth mentioning. I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to think of anything else that has stood out to me so far, but I think that pretty much covers all the initial impressions from the first month and the first 550 miles. Really, all there is to say is that this bike is just so much fun. I even find myself wanting to ride this more than my VFR 750 every time it comes time to ride. Really, I am just so stoked on this bike and so stoked for all the adventures that I have to come on it. It has been such a blast so far, and I cannot wait to see what else I get to do on this bike. And like I mentioned, just the few things that I do have negative to say about this bike are such cheap, easy fixes that you'd probably be doing anyways, like an upgraded seat and upgraded suspension is not even a reason to write this bike off. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what you can expect out of the first month on your Rebel 500. Make sure to go ahead and check out all my other content if you haven't already. Like I said, I got plenty of videos on this bike. I have videos on my old Rebel 300. I have videos on my VFR 750 and a ton more to come on this bike. So make sure to smash that subscribe button so that you don't miss out, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace!